Hi there, and welcome to our new section which is related to linked list interview questions that are asked during interviews by famous companies. So here we will look at different types of questions that are related to linked list. In this section, I will explain popular questions that are asked by famous companies, and by understanding the logic behind these questions, you will be able to solve similar problems easily. Some questions are very difficult, but you don't need to be afraid because I will explain everything in detail in this section. Now in the first lecture of this section, we will create a linked list class that will be needed for upcoming lectures in this section. So rather than creating a linked list class for each question, here I will create one class and import this class for each question. Now you might be interested why we are not using the classes that we created in our previous sections. Because there we have created 4 different files and each of them is responsible for different types of linked list. But here I will create one common class which will be applicable for all questions of this section. Now another concern might be that instead of creating this class step by step over here, we can just copy the past code and continue to the questions as many instructors do in their courses. But in my opinion, creating these classes one more time over here make you guys more confident, because these topics become easier and easier when you repeatedly practice them. So let's get started to create our class. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I need to create node class over here. So I'm going to create a new file and name this file node. Now inside this file, I'm going to create node class and we are going to create the properties of a node, which are value, next, and previous references. So I'm going to declare our node class inside this node file over here. So our class will be like this: public class node. So inside this node class, we are going to declare the properties of this class over here. So the first property will be public int value, and the second one will be next reference and previous reference. So this will be the type of node, next, and this will be the type of node also, previous. So these references are pointing to next and previous nodes in our linked list. Now the next thing that we are going to do, I need to create linked list class. So here I'm going to create a new file and name it linkedlist.java, and inside this file we are going to create linked list class over here. So our class will be like this: public class linked list. So here inside this class, the first thing that we are going to do, we need to create head and tail. So here I'm going to create public head. So head and tail references has to be the type of node, so I'm going to put the type as node. So the next reference will be tail. So here I'm just going to copy it over here and change it to tail. Now here, if you want, you can create a size property. It's up to you, but it might be useful in the future in our questions. So I'm going to create integer size over here. Now after doing so, the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to create a method which is responsible for creating linked list over here. Basically, this method will take parameter node value. So based on this node value, it's going to create a linked list in which we have only one node. So I'm going to create our method like this: public void. So our method will not return anything. Create linked list. So as a parameter, it will take type of integer node value. So this will be the first node's value in our linked list. So inside class, the first thing that we are going to do, as you remember, we need to create a node and assign this value to it. So to create a node, I'm going to call node class, node new node. So here I'm just quickly doing them because we have explained these ones in our previous lectures. Here just I'm reviewing them, so that's why I'm explaining this very quickly. So new node's value will be the node value that comes from this parameter. So I'm just going to copy it from here and paste it over here. Then the next thing that we are going to do over here, we are going to set the next reference of this new node to null. So I'm going to set next reference to null. Then I need to create a link between head to this node and a link between tail to this node. So head will be set to new node, and similarly new node will be set to tail over here. And we are going to set size by 1, because when we are initially creating a linked list over here, the number of nodes will be 1, so that's why we are setting size to 1. Now the next method that we are going to create over here is we are going to create insert node method. Now in this case, this insert method will be responsible for inserting a node at the end of this linked list over here. So that's why I'm going to create our method over here like this: public void insert node. So this time it's not going to take any location parameter because by default we are adding the element at the end of linked list. So this will take only node value. Then inside this method, the first thing that we are going to do, we are going to create a new node and add this node at the end of this linked list that we created over here. Now new node will be created based on the node class. So new node will be new node. Then after creating a new node, we need to assign the value that comes from this parameter to this new node over here. So new node's value will be node value. Then after doing so, now we know that in case of single linked list, when we are adding a node at the end of linked list, we have to set the next reference of last node to null. So in this case, new node dot next will be null. So for simplicity, we are creating a single linked list over here. So that's why we are adding this node at the end of single linked list. So when we are adding this node at the end of single linked list, we know that last node next reference in single linked list points to the null. So here we are setting it to null. Then last node has to point to this node, so I'm going to put it like this. Tail.next will be new node. So by this line of code, we are creating a link from last node to the new node over here. Then at the end, tail has to point to this node also over here. Then the size will be increased by 1, because in this case, we are adding only one node in our linked list over here. Now the next method that we are going to create, traverse linked list, because when we are doing operations on linked list, we might need to print out that linked list into the console. So to print out the linked list into the console in a proper way, I'm going to create traversal method over here. So I'm going to declare this method like this, traversal, public void traversal. Now inside this class, all we have to do, we have to visit all nodes of this linked list over here and print out their value into console. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to create temporary node over here, which will take the value of head. Then we are going to loop through this linked list and print out nodes values to the console. So I'm going to write for loop like this. So for I starts from 0 and it will continue until we reach the size of the linked list. And in each step is going to be increased by 1. Then we are going to print out the value of node to the console. So I'm going to print out value of node to the console. So temp node dot value. Then inside this loop, I'm going to write if condition, which puts the arrow between these node values over here. So if I is not equal to the size -1, this means that if we have not reached the last node, so in this case we can put arrow between the nodes in our printout. So here I'm going to put system.out.print. So I'm going to print out an arrow like this. So it's going to be like this. So this means that we are putting an arrow between each node's value over here. So this makes our code more readable. Now in each step we are going to continue to the next node. So I'm going to set temp node's value to the temp node.next over here. Then at the end, I'm going to print out to the console new character to have more space, which makes our code more readable. So here I'm going to put out like this. So with this, we are making our console more clear, so our linked list becomes more readable. Now with this, we have finished our implementation of linked list class. So here we have implemented 3 methods. So the first method is responsible for creating linked list, and the second method is responsible for inserting nodes into linked list, and the third method is responsible for printing out linked list to the console. Now based on this class, let's create our first linked list to see that how this is working. So here inside main class, I'm going to create new linked list like this. So it's going to be created based on the linked list class. Then we are going to call our create method to create linked list, which will take, for example, value of 1. Then we can call our insert method to insert some nodes to our linked list. So here I'm going to put 2. Then I'm going to call this method few times, for example, then 3, then 4, then 5. Then after doing so, I'm going to call traversal method to print out our linked list into the console. So if I run our code, so you see that we have created a linked list like this. So when we are creating it, initially we had one element, then we have inserted 2, 3, 4, and 5 to this linked list. So now our linked list looks like this. So as you see, all methods that we have implemented over here works without any error. Now based on this linked list class that we created over here, in the next lecture, we are going to start to look at our first question. So see you in the next lecture.